This is the third development presentation in the series and focuses on language development. However, as I've said in the previous presentations, language development, or more precisely the ability to communicate with others, is integral to cognitive development and to a certain extent aspects of motor development too, and vice versa. Again, in some sections I highlight films or resources that illustrate the area being discussed. Links to the films will pop up. Links to other resources mentioned are accessible in the text below the YouTube video and can be accessed after the whole presentation. In this presentation, we will explore how knowledge from the unfortunate scenarios of feral and isolated children have helped in identifying how language develops in childhood. We will look at how the combination of the child's linguistic environment and innate mechanisms combine in language development. We will look at the cognitive processes that aid language development and how language development aids cognitive process. We will look at specific moments and processes in language development, including motherese, the naming explosion, fast mapping, and word and sentence development. And we conclude with thinking about what we have learned in relation to a specific scenario. So to begin, Victor was what was called a feral child. He was found in the woods in France in 1797. At the time, he was thought to be around 12 to 13 years of age. When he was found, he had no speech, normal hearing, and could utter some sounds. A physician attempted to socialise him and to use language across a 5-year period. However, overall, Victor's language learning was poor. He was able to understand language, but physically unable to produce it, only being able to say 2 things, milk and oh my God, across these 5 years. Most of the sounds he made were grunts and howls. This little difference from when he was found. GENIE was what was called an isolated child, and she was rescued from a captive situation when she was 13 years old in 1970. At the time she was found, she could not stand erect and was unable to speak apart from 2 words, stop it, and no more. She had very little exposure to language during her imprisonment. Her father did not speak to her and communicated through barking. From the age of 20 months, she had lived in near total isolation and had been attached to a potty by a harness for most of the day. Like Victor, she also underwent a program of language remediation. She soon picked up one-word utterances such as no and cat. In the second year, her language resembled that of a normal 18 to 20-month-old child. She could distinguish grammatical nuances such as plural and singular nouns and could put 2 words together such as want milk and big teeth. However, there was no vocabulary explosion after 18 to 20 months, which I will talk about in a later slide. She was never able to ask questions and would get words in the wrong order, such as, where is Graham cracker on the top shelf? So, in summary, her semantic development was rapid and extensive, lots of words, but her syntactic development was slow. She couldn't get words in the right order. Her cognitive development was ahead of her language development. The fact that Victor and GENIE were not able to catch up adds weight to a critical period hypothesis. This is a period early in life in which we are biologically prepared to acquire language. If this period is missed, neurological changes in the brain leave the learner less able to acquire language. And these changes are thought to occur near puberty, so unfortunately it was too late for Victor and GENIE. Johnson and Newport carried out an observation study where they conducted a grammatical test for Korean and Chinese people who had immigrated to America at various ages from 2 to 39 years. This study showed that when children immigrated to America before the age of 7, their mastery of English grammar was the same as a native speaker. However, after this age, the older the age of immigration, the worse their mastery of English grammar was. This study supports the theory that the sensitive period for language development had passed. For these older immigrants, they may speak a PIDGIN version of the language, a simpler form of the dominant language, just enough to get by. In the PIDGIN version of the language, there is no recognisable syntax nor complex sentences. CREOLE, by comparison, is when the children of these immigrants acquire this PIDGIN as their native language. By contrast, they develop relatively sophisticated complex sentences with the structural rules of other languages. This again fits with the age aspect of being able to develop syntactical complexity. So it was Noam Chomsky that identified an area of our brain which facilitates language development and called it the language acquisition device, LAD. He believed that the LAD facilitates language and enables children to derive the rules of grammar from everyday speech, whichever the native language. So this suggests that language is experience expectant. The brain expects words, if you like. Chomsky suggests that children are pre-wired for language. So it's thought that children have an innate grammar or a linguistic backup system, which is the child's language system. This is present whether there is any environmental input or not. This is called bioprogramming and can operate in the absence of linguistic stimulation. When there is linguistic input, bioprogramming is suppressed and children learn the native language. The video clip embedded in this slide shows twin toddlers communicating in their own innate grammar or communication system. With time and wider social input, they will lose this natural and very entertaining ability to communicate in their own language, and they will take on the native language of their community. Some kind of language is essential in human communication, and this is not always a verbal language. For example, deaf children create a gestural language that's similar to hearing children's language, commonly called home sign. Similar stages in language development occurs despite the difference in mode. Deaf 10-month-olds often babble in sign, producing signs that are meaningless but resemble the tempo and duration of real signs, just as hearing children babble with sounds before producing real words. The short video here shows this babbling in an interaction with a child who is deaf and his family. Gesture and symbol are very important in language development. Children begin using gestures shortly before their first birthday, and these pave the way for language development. For young children, approximately 50% of all objects are referred to first by gesture and then about 3 months later by the word. Mr. Tumble, shown here in the slide, is a character in a program called Something Special on CBeebies. This is a program that showcases signing, in this case Makaton, for people with learning disability. However, it is a good skill to develop for all young children as an aid to communication, particularly with pre-verbal children, and it's increasingly used in nurseries for this very reason. If you want to learn a few Makaton signs, have a look at the link embedded in this slide with the help of Mr. Tumble. Cognitive development and language development go hand in hand and occur nearly simultaneously. Hence the need to integrate the three development presentations, as there is overlap and interplay between the three areas. So, in relation to this, a very young infant who has not acquired object permanence will use words referring to concrete objects and here and now words such as hungry and wee, etc. Once a child has mastered object permanence, they can begin to use words referring to objects or events that are not immediately present, such as all gone truck or more milk. So let's briefly look at how language develops. Initially, the child is non-verbal. However, hopefully, they are surrounded by verbal interaction. Our language with pre-verbal children tends to be shorter, more concrete, more directive, and more intonationally exaggerated than adult speech. This type of language and interaction has been called motherese and is shown in the video in this slide. Once an infant's vocabulary reaches around 50 words, it then builds rapidly, at a rate of 50 to 100 or more words per month. These words are mostly nouns, and the rapid building of this knowledge occurs at around 18 months of age and is called the naming explosion. One of the tactics a child uses to facilitate this naming explosion is fast mapping, which the following slide will illustrate.
Have a look at this snark and then have a go at answering the questions. You might want to pause the presentation for a few moments here.
So from this exercise you can see that fast mapping is the process of learning a new word simply from the contrastive use of a familiar word and an unfamiliar word. The questions on the previous slide put you back in a toddler's shoes listening to adults speak and relying on context to comprehend the strange vocabulary to describe the snark. Often, when there isn't enough context to work out the answer, comprehension is impossible, which is what you experience probably with question 5. Younger children also tend to overextend, using one word for a range of similar meanings as they haven't yet learned the specific terms, such as open for opening a door, peeling fruit, or undoing shoelaces. Children's first sentences tend to be two-word combinations. This is called telegraphic speech, so short sentences such as go out, lift up, eat now, want drink. Most children begin to combine words in such simple sentences by 18 to 24 months of age. This table gives an overview of language development, which is rapid and achieves a high level of complexity by age 5. Basically, there's an increasing language complexity with age and cognitive development. Maturity of language syntax can be achieved in the concrete operational cognitive development stage. How we use language and vocabulary develops in the formal operational stage, and then across our lifetime. So to conclude this presentation on language development, take a few moments to think about what you have learned and apply it to the scenario in the slide. I'll read the scenario out for you and then take a few moments to answer the questions in the following slide. 2-year-old Peter attends the early years centre regularly. His mother is concerned that he's not talking as well as he should. Peter is 27 months old and can say about 25 words that his parents can understand, but they're not clear. He points and gestures to get what he wants and has some temper tantrums when he's not understood. He follows instructions given by his parents or adults at the centre. He's very interactive with his parents and engages easily with other children, playing mostly alongside his peers, but showing some cooperative play. He particularly likes to play with sand, and he gets excited when the sand table is opened up for play. His father thinks that Peter is a late talker like he was. He thinks Peter will talk when he's ready. But Peter's mother has noticed that Peter's 11-month-old sister is already babbling, mimicking words and saying a few words and exclamations. This is something Peter did not do at the same age. Take a few moments to think about what stage of language development might we expect Peter to be? Do you have any concerns? And what might you recommend for Peter and his family to support his language development? Here are the references for this presentation on language development, and thank you for listening.